the mystery behind his silence. The evening lights of Los Angeles glowed like quiet stars against the horizon. Cameras flashed, questions echoed, and voices mixed with the hum of fame. Keanu Reeves walked through the crowd with his usual calm face. He smiled, waved once, and quietly stepped into the black car waiting for him. The door closed and the noise faded. For a moment he sat still, watching the reflection of his own eyes in the glass. There was peace, but also something else, a shadow of longing. The question that everyone kept asking followed him silently everywhere. Is Keanu Reeves dating anyone? It wasn't a simple question for him. To the world, it was just curiosity, a headline, a rumor, a magazine cover. But for Keanu, it carried memories that never truly left. Love for him had always been something quiet, something sacred. He had known deep affection and deep loss. And each time the world asked about his love life, it wasn't just gossip. It was a reminder of everything he once had, and everything he still carried within. That night, as his car moved through the city, his manager, Claire, looked at him through the rearview mirror. "You know they'll ask again tomorrow," she said softly. Keanu smiled faintly. "They always do. You could just say no comment." "I could," he said. "But silence sometimes says more." He turned his head to the window. The streets passed by like old dreams. Years ago, love had entered his life quietly, just like he did, without grand announcements. Her name was Julia. She wasn't a celebrity, not someone the world would recognize. She was a writer who loved peace, who found beauty in small things. They met at a bookstore. She didn't ask for autographs. Instead, she told him that his movie reminded her of her late brother. It wasn't about fame, it was about connection. And that changed everything. As the car stopped at a red light, Keanu remembered the way she laughed, softly like rain on glass. She had taught him something no camera ever could, that love didn't need to be loud to be real. But fate had other plans. One night, while returning from a late charity event, her car never made it home. The pain that followed shaped his silence. The press never knew the full story, and Keanu never corrected them. He carried the truth quietly, letting time do what it could. Years later, the world still looked at him as the mysterious man who never dated, who walked alone at premieres, who smiled gently but kept his distance. Some called it sadness, others called it peace. But the truth was he wasn't running from love, he was protecting it. He had loved once, deeply, and that love still lived in every quiet smile he gave. One morning, while shooting a new film in New York, a journalist named Emma asked him the same question again during a live interview. "People admire how grounded you are," she said softly. "But they wonder, is there someone special in your life right now?" Keanu paused. The studio was silent. Even the lights seemed to wait for his answer. After a long moment, he said, "Love doesn't always need to be shared with the world. Sometimes the most beautiful things are meant to stay private." The host smiled politely, but behind the glass, Emma noticed something. His voice trembled slightly just once, and in that single tremble, there was a story. Later that night, as he walked alone through the quiet city streets, Keanu thought about how strange love was. People looked for it everywhere, in parties, screens, fame, yet sometimes the truest form of it lived in memory. He wasn't alone because he lacked someone. He was alone because part of him was still with someone who was gone, and that made him kinder, softer, more human. When he reached his apartment, he placed his jacket on the chair and walked to a small wooden shelf. There lay a worn-out notebook, Julia's last gift. Its cover was faded, the pages slightly torn, but her handwriting remained clear. "Keep being kind, even when it hurts." He touched those words, and a faint smile crossed his face. The next morning, the internet buzzed with headlines. Keanu Reeves talks about love with rare honesty. People shared clips of the interview, adding their own thoughts. Some admired his wisdom, others speculated about his past. But Emma, the journalist, couldn't stop thinking about the look in his eyes. It wasn't loneliness, it was remembrance. In the following days, she received a small package at her office. No name, no address, only a book. Letters of quiet love. Inside, a note read, For those who still believe kindness is love. She smiled, understanding instantly who had sent it. Meanwhile, Keanu continued his routine. Film sets, quiet dinners, motorcycle rides. He didn't talk much, but his actions spoke for him. He still gave away his seat to strangers, still donated without telling anyone, still checked on crew members before he left. His love now existed in small gestures, not grand gestures. And yet, something was beginning to change. One afternoon, while filming on a rainy street in Toronto, he met someone unexpected, a woman who looked familiar, not in face, but in presence. She was helping the crew carry boxes in the rain, even though it wasn't her job. When Keanu thanked her, she just said, "We all help where we can, right?" Her name was Leah. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't trying to know him. She was simply kind. That night, for the first time in years, Keanu caught himself thinking about love not as a memory, but as a possibility. It scared him, but it also made him feel alive. And deep down, he wondered, could kindness lead him to love again? When kindness found him again, the morning after the rain, the sky over Toronto looked soft and silver. The film crew gathered around the set trying to shake off the cold. Keanu walked quietly among them, greeting each person with a small nod, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. He wasn't the kind of man who needed attention. He found peace in listening, in noticing. That was what made him different. But that day, something small broke his routine. Leah, the same woman who had helped carry boxes the day before, was there again. Her hair was slightly wet from the drizzle, her jacket too thin for the cold. She wasn't a famous actress or a producer. She worked with the logistics team, arranging small things that no one else noticed, making sure everyone had warm water, fixing broken props, bringing food to the late workers. Keanu noticed the way she spoke to people, gentle but strong, humble yet confident. She laughed easily, but not loudly. There was something in her that reminded him of Julia, not in appearance, but in soul. As the camera rolled and scenes began, Keanu focused on his lines, yet part of his mind wandered. When he saw Leah walking across the set with a box in her hands, a strange warmth touched him. He didn't know what it was. Maybe it was kindness calling back. After lunch, while most of the crew rested, Keanu sat under a tent, watching the rain fall softly on the pavement. Leah approached quietly with a towel and a cup of tea. "You look cold," she said simply. He smiled. "A little." She handed him the cup. "Green tea. I thought you might like it." Keanu looked at her curiously. "How did you know I drink green tea?" She shrugged lightly. "I just guessed." For a few minutes they said nothing. The sound of rain filled the silence. Keanu's eyes softened. "You remind me of someone," he said slowly. "Good memories or bad ones?" she asked. "The kind that never leave," he said quietly. Leah smiled gently, not asking more. And for some reason, that made Keanu feel at ease. Most people pushed for details, but she didn't. She respected his silence. As days passed, their conversations grew, always simple, always honest. She never treated him like a celebrity. She talked about books, music, small joys, and how kindness could heal unseen wounds. She believed that people didn't have to be perfect to deserve peace. One evening, after a long shoot, the crew packed up to leave. Keanu noticed Leah still cleaning up while others laughed and went home. He walked up to her. "You don't have to do all this," he said. "Someone has to," she replied, smiling. "And I don't mind." "You always help everyone," he said softly. "Who helps you?" She paused for a moment. "Maybe kindness helps itself," she said. Keanu looked at her, quietly moved. Those words echoed inside him. Maybe kindness helps itself. He had spent so long giving, without expecting anything in return, that he forgot how it felt when someone gave back. That night, as he sat in his hotel room, he thought about Leah's words again. He opened Julia's old notebook and read her handwriting. "Keep being kind, even when it hurts." He realized that maybe life was trying to show him something, that love and kindness were not finished with him yet. The next morning, he saw Leah struggling with heavy boxes near the truck. Without saying a word, he joined her and lifted one. She looked up, surprised. "You don't have to—" "Someone has to," he said, repeating her words. They both laughed quietly. From that moment, something began to shift between them. Small moments turned into silent understanding. They didn't need long talks. They understood each other through presence. She made him laugh again. Not the polite laugh he gave during interviews, but the real one that came from deep inside. One afternoon, while taking a break, she asked, "You're always so calm. How do you do that?" He thought for a moment. "I guess I learned that peace isn't found in noise." "But don't you ever get tired of silence?" she asked. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but silence is honest, and I've learned to trust honesty." As the sun set that evening, Leah watched him quietly. She could see that his calmness was not born from peace alone. It was shaped by pain. She didn't ask about it. She simply stayed. A few days later, when the filming wrapped up, the crew gathered for dinner. Laughter filled the restaurant. Keanu sat beside Leah, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel out of place. He felt human again. But when the night ended and everyone said goodbye, Leah hesitated before leaving. She looked at him and said, "You're kind, Keanu. But kindness doesn't mean you have to walk alone." He looked into her eyes, honest, steady, full of quiet truth. And for a second, he couldn't find any words. After she left, he sat in his car for a long time, thinking. He realized she was right. For years, he believed that love and loss couldn't live in the same heart. But maybe they could. Maybe love could return, not to replace what was lost, but to remind him that his heart still worked. Later that night, he found himself walking in the rain again. This time, not alone. He called Leah and asked if she was still awake. She laughed softly through the phone. "I knew you'd call," she said. "How?" "Because sometimes silence gets lonely." They met at a small coffee shop near the harbor. No cameras, no questions, no noise, just two people, two warm cups, and a quiet kind of comfort that didn't need words. As they talked, Keanu realized something powerful. He wasn't afraid of love anymore. He was afraid of losing it. But love wasn't asking him to forget the past. It was asking him to live again, to believe again. And in that soft rain under the golden lights, Keanu looked at Leah and smiled. For the first time in years, he wasn't remembering someone who was gone. He was seeing someone who was here. When silence began to speak, the next morning arrived quietly, carrying the soft chill of dawn. Sunlight slipped through the hotel window, touching the edges of Keanu's notebook that still lay open on the table. The words, "Keep being kind, even when it hurts," seemed to glow faintly in the morning light. He stared at them for a while, thinking about the night before, the laughter, the calm, the strange feeling of peace that had returned after years of emptiness. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt that kind of ease with someone. Leah didn't ask too many questions, didn't try to fill the silence. She let silence exist, and somehow it spoke louder than words ever could. Later that day, Keanu arrived at the studio for a small interview. The host smiled brightly. "Keanu, people online are talking about how calm and happy you've looked recently. Is there a reason for that?" He smiled slightly. "Maybe peace looks like happiness to people who don't have it yet." The audience laughed softly, but there was truth hidden in his tone. When the cameras went off, he found a quiet corner outside. The air smelled of rain and coffee. As he sat there, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Leah. Morning. Found your quote from yesterday's interview beautiful. Also, you forgot your jacket on set. I'm holding it hostage until you buy me coffee. He smiled. A real one this time. He typed back, deal. That evening, they met at a small bookstore cafe near the Old District, a place filled with the warm scent of paper and wood. Leah was already there, reading a book and sipping hot chocolate. Her calm presence reminded him of quiet afternoons from years ago, when life moved slower and laughter came easier. You're late, she teased softly as he walked in. Traffic, he said with a grin. Or maybe fate wanted me to be late so you could read another chapter. She laughed, closing the book. You're bad at excuses, but good at lines. They talked for hours, not about fame or work, but about life, about small things that made people feel alive. She told him about her childhood, about growing up in a small town where kindness wasn't rare. It was normal. He listened, quietly admiring how easily she spoke about life without bitterness or pride. When it was his turn, he told her about Julia. He didn't say her name at first, but Leah knew this story came from deep within him. He told her how he met someone long ago who changed how he saw the world, how he lost her, and how the silence that followed almost swallowed him whole. When he finished, Leah said nothing for a long time. Then she reached across the table and gently touched his hand. "You never really lose people like that," she whispered. "They just move from beside you to inside you." Those words stayed with him. They echoed later that night when he returned home. Love, he realized, doesn't end. It changes form. Maybe what he felt for Julia was now guiding him towards someone who understood him in a different way. Days turned into weeks. Keanu and Leah saw each other often, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just a quiet walk by the lake. There was no rush, no promises. It was gentle, honest, real. But peace, like all things, doesn't stay untested. One afternoon, a paparazzi camera caught them together outside a cafe. The photo spread online within hours. Keanu Reeves seen with mystery woman, new love interest. Headlines exploded across social media. People began guessing who she was, where she worked, how long they'd known each other. When Leah saw the articles, she looked worried. "I didn't think this would happen," she said softly when she met him later that day. "I didn't want to become a story." "You're not a story," he said gently. "You're real. That's what matters." "But the internet doesn't care about real," she replied. He understood her fear. He had seen how fame twisted truth, how kindness became gossip. Part of him wanted to protect her, to hide her from the noise. But another part knew that hiding wouldn't fix it. Understanding would. The next day, during a charity press event, a journalist asked him directly, "Keanu, there are rumors about you and someone new. Is it true?" He paused for a moment, eyes calm but firm. "I think the world spends too much time guessing who people love," he said. "Maybe we should spend more time learning how they love." The room went quiet. Even the cameras paused. That answer spread faster than any rumor. People began sharing it everywhere, calling it the most respectful response ever. Meanwhile, Leah watched the clip from home, tears welling in her eyes. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Without fear, without hesitation. He didn't hide her. He didn't expose her. He simply protected the truth with grace. A few days later, she met him at the harbor again. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "I wanted to," he replied. "You turned gossip into something beautiful," she whispered. He smiled. "Maybe truth is always beautiful when you don't try to decorate it." That evening, they sat by the water watching the sun melt into the sea. The air was golden, the kind of light that makes the world look honest. Leah leaned her head gently on his shoulder. He didn't move, didn't speak. Just let the silence speak for both of them. After a while, she said, "You're still afraid to call it love, aren't you?" He looked at the horizon. "Maybe I'm afraid to lose it again." "Then don't hold it," she whispered. "Just walk with it. Love isn't meant to be held too tightly." He turned to her, eyes soft and full of quiet emotion. "And if it fades?" She smiled. "Then at least we lived honestly." And for the first time, Keanu realized that maybe love wasn't about holding forever. Maybe it was about cherishing now, the moments, the smiles, the peace. As night fell and the harbor lights began to glow, he felt something shift deep inside him. The silence that once carried pain now carried peace. When the world began to notice, the morning sun over Los Angeles came slow and golden, spreading across the glass walls of the studio where Keanu had returned to film another project. The city buzzed, but he moved through it quietly, still carrying that same calm aura that made people stop and look twice. Yet behind that peace, something was shifting. For the first time in years, Keanu's quiet world wasn't just about work and solitude. It carried a new warmth, a presence that stayed in his thoughts even when she wasn't there. Leah. Every small thing reminded him of her now. The way she smiled without trying. The way she spoke softly but meant every word. She had slowly become a part of his everyday rhythm. The gentle thought before he slept. The voice that echoed when the world went too loud. But with that peace came attention. People were watching. Fans noticed that Keanu smiled more in interviews. The press began digging deeper, and soon her name started to surface. Leah's phone began to ring endlessly. Reporters found her workplace. Some even followed her car. Her calm world, built on quiet kindness and small joys, suddenly became heavy with noise. One evening, she called Keanu, her voice shaking. "They came to my office again," she said quietly. "Who did?" "The photographers. They asked my boss questions about us. I didn't know what to say." Keanu closed his eyes. He had seen this before, how the world loved to turn truth into entertainment. He felt guilty, though he had done nothing wrong. "I'm sorry, Leah," he whispered. "It's not your fault," she said. "But I don't know if I can handle this." There was silence between them for a long time. Both of them knew that fame didn't mix easily with peace, and love, for people like Keanu, always came with a cost. The next day, without warning, a gossip channel released a headline: Keanu Reeves' secret romance. Meet the woman who changed him. They posted pictures of them at the harbor, at the cafe, walking in the rain. What was once sacred and private became public overnight. Comments flooded in, some kind, some cruel. People praised their connection, others doubted it, and some even made up stories. It was chaos, the kind that destroys peace if you let it. Leah stopped answering calls for a while. Keanu respected her silence. He didn't chase, didn't push. He waited, knowing that true care doesn't demand, it understands. A week later, he left a note at her apartment door. There were no grand words, no drama. Just a few lines written in his calm handwriting: "You don't have to face the noise alone. If you ever need silence again, I'll be there." 2 nights later, there was a knock on his door. When he opened it, Leah stood there. She looked tired, her eyes red from sleepless nights. But her presence was still gentle. Still her. "I didn't know where else to go," she said softly. "You came to the right place," he replied. They sat in his living room for a long time, saying nothing. Then slowly she began to cry. Not the loud kind of cry, but the silent one. The kind that breaks your heart because it's filled with exhaustion. He didn't try to comfort her with words. He just sat beside her, offering his presence. Sometimes that's all a person needs, to not be alone in the storm. When she finally looked up, she whispered, "I didn't realize how heavy your world was." "It's lighter when someone stands in it with me," he said quietly. That night, they talked until dawn, about pain, about love, about the strange price of kindness in a loud world. She told him she never wanted fame. She only wanted peace. He promised her that whatever happened, he would protect that peace, and he meant it. The next morning, Keanu made a decision. He called his publicist and released a short statement to the press, one that surprised everyone. It read, "Someone kind has entered my life. She's not from this industry. Please respect her privacy. Not every part of kindness has to be seen." Within hours, the internet exploded again. But this time, something was different. Instead of more gossip, people began to admire his words. They called it the most respectful love statement ever made. Interviews shifted from curiosity to respect. Even the harshest media voices softened for a while. Leah saw the statement on her phone. She read it 3 times, her eyes filling with tears. He didn't deny her. He didn't expose her. He protected her. Later, when they met again, she looked at him quietly. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know," he replied. "But I wanted you to feel safe again." She smiled faintly. "You always choose peace, don't you?" "Because peace is the only thing fame can't buy," he said softly. Their bond deepened after that, not through dramatic words, but through quiet trust. She started visiting him more often, sometimes cooking for him, sometimes just sitting beside him while he read. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of unspoken care. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Leah stood on his balcony, watching the city lights come alive. "Does it ever get lonely?" she asked. "It used to," he said, "but not tonight." She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the golden light. For a moment, everything was still. No cameras, no headlines, no noise. Just two souls finding peace in each other's company. But deep inside, Keanu knew something. The world doesn't stay silent forever. There would be more questions, more tests, more moments where love would be challenged. Still, for that evening, he allowed himself to breathe. Love had returned to his life, not to complicate it, but to remind him that the world can still be kind, even when it watches. When peace was tested, days turned into weeks, and life slowly found its rhythm again. Keanu continued his film work, interviews, and quiet public appearances, while Leah returned to her job behind the scenes. They both tried to live normally, even though nothing about their world was truly normal anymore. The media still whispered, still watched, still tried to turn kindness into headlines. But for a while, they managed to keep the noise at a distance. Yet peace, as always, has its tests. One evening, as Keanu finished a shoot in Vancouver, he received a call from Leah. Her voice was calm, but there was something hidden underneath. A strain that he hadn't heard before. "I think I need some space," she said quietly. He froze. "Space? Not from you," she said quickly. "From all of this. The attention, the pressure. It's like the world doesn't want to let us just exist," he didn't argue. He listened, his silence full of understanding. "Take what you need," he said softly. "You're not upset?" she asked. "No," he replied. "You can't hold on to peace by forcing it." After they hung up, he sat alone in his hotel room, the city lights glowing outside like scattered stars. He stared at his reflection in the glass and thought about how fragile peace could be. Even love, when pure, had to breathe. And sometimes, giving space was the only way to keep it alive. For the next few weeks, they didn't talk much. No calls, no messages. The distance hurt, but Keanu respected it. He spent his time riding his motorcycle, reading late into the night, visiting old bookstores, things that reminded him who he was when the world wasn't watching. Then, one afternoon, while he was in a small charity event for children's hospitals, a reporter asked again about Leah. "You've been quiet about your relationship," the reporter said. "Are you still together?" Keanu looked up slowly. His eyes, calm but steady, met the camera lens. "Real love doesn't live online," he said softly. "It lives in the spaces people can't see." The clip went viral within hours. People called it poetic, humble, rare. But behind those simple words, there was truth. He didn't know if Leah would come back. He hoped, but he didn't expect. A few days later, he received an envelope. No name, no address. Inside was a small letter, Leah's handwriting. "You were right. Peace can't be forced. I needed time to remember who I was before the noise. But I also realized something. Every time the world went silent, I missed your calm. I missed how your presence felt like home. If you still want this, maybe we can start again." Quietly, slowly, honestly. Keanu smiled faintly, a warmth spreading through his chest. He took a deep breath, folded the letter, and placed it gently inside Julia's old notebook, next to the words, "Keep being kind." It felt right. That evening, he called Leah. She answered after the second ring. "You read it," she said softly. "I did. And I never stopped waiting," he said. When they met again, it wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no speeches, just two people sitting across from each other in the same small cafe where they first shared green tea and silence. She looked at him and smiled. "You're the only person who makes silence feel full," she said. "And you're the only one who reminds me that peace isn't loneliness," he replied. From that day forward, they rebuilt quietly. They stopped caring about what others thought. No announcements, no photographs, no statements. They lived like ordinary people, Dinners at small places, late-night walks, helping strangers without being seen. One afternoon, as they walked through a park, a small boy dropped his ice cream and began to cry. Before the parents could even react, Keanu crouched down, handed the boy his own ice cream, and smiled. The boy stopped crying instantly. Leah watched him, her heart softening. When he stood up, she whispered, "That's why I stayed. You never stopped being kind." He looked at her quietly and said, "Kindness is the only language love understands." Their bond grew deeper, not through big moments, but through small, honest gestures. She brought him coffee when he worked late. He left her notes with sketches of little hearts and lines of poetry. They didn't call it love every day, but they lived it. Still, fame has a way of testing even the purest hearts. One morning, a false rumor spread online, claiming that Leah was only with him for attention. It was cruel, made up, and viral within hours. She saw it, and it broke something inside her. "Why do they do this?" she asked him, her voice trembling. "Because they don't know us," he said gently. "But it hurts," she whispered. "I didn't ask for any of this." He reached for her hand. "I know, and you don't have to defend yourself. Truth doesn't need to shout." Later that evening, instead of responding to the rumor, Keanu donated anonymously to a charity that helped victims of online harassment. The donation slip only said, "For those hurt by noise they didn't create." The world noticed again, not because of the money, but because of the message. Fans wrote online, "He fights hate with kindness." Even Leah's name, which had been dragged through gossip, began to be associated with grace and peace. A few days later, as they sat watching the sunset, she said, "You never fight anger with anger." "How do you do that?" He smiled faintly. "Because anger takes everything from you. Kindness gives it back." The sky turned orange and soft. Leah leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "You make me believe in good people again." He didn't answer. He just smiled, knowing that sometimes silence was the truest form of love. That night, as they walked home hand in hand, the city lights glowed around them. For once there were no cameras, no reporters, no headlines. Just peace, the kind they both fought hard to keep. When love finally found its peace, the last days of winter faded slowly into spring. The air grew softer, and the city of Los Angeles began to bloom again. Trees dressed in quiet green, the streets glowing gold at sunset. Keanu often said that every season reminded him of something. Winter for him was memory. Spring was healing. And that year, for the first time in a long time, he felt the calm weight of both. His days flowed quietly. Morning coffee, long walks with Leah, script readings, and moments of laughter that never needed to be shared online. It was a life without noise, a love without headlines. They had built something honest. Fragile, yes, but real in every sense. One afternoon, while Keanu sat in his garden reading, Leah came outside holding 2 cups of tea. She smiled as she handed him one. "You've been quiet," she said softly. "I was thinking," he replied. "About what?" "How strange it feels to finally stop running," he said. She looked at him curiously. "Running from what? From the past? From pain? From love?" Leah sat beside him. "Maybe you weren't running," she whispered. "Maybe you were just walking toward peace and didn't realize it." They sat there together, the sunlight resting gently on their faces. The silence between them was beautiful, not empty, not heavy, just full of everything words could never say. In the weeks that followed, Keanu's new film released. It wasn't an action movie or a blockbuster. It was a quiet story about kindness, forgiveness, and starting again. Critics called it his most heartfelt performance. But those who truly knew him understood, and he wasn't acting. He was living. After the premiere, he and Leah attended a small private gathering. No cameras, no flashing lights, just close friends, laughter, and soft music. Someone asked him if he would ever write his own story one day. He smiled and said, "I think I already am. Every day I choose kindness, I write another line." Later that night, they drove to the same harbor where everything had begun. The place where rain had once fallen on their first quiet meeting. The water shimmered under the moonlight. Leah looked around and smiled. It feels different now, she said. Maybe because we're different now, he replied. They sat on the wooden bench, their hands barely touching. For a long time they said nothing. Then Leah spoke softly. Do you ever think about her? Keanu looked at the water. Every day, he admitted. But not in sadness anymore. She's part of who I am. And maybe, she led me here. Leah smiled gently. Then maybe love isn't about replacing someone. Maybe it's about carrying them forward so your heart stays open. He turned to her, his eyes glimmering in the moonlight. You've taught me that, he said. You made me see that love isn't about beginning again. It's about continuing, with courage. They sat there until the world went quiet again. The waves whispered softly against the pier, and a gentle wind brushed past them like an old friend. For once, Keanu didn't feel the weight of fame or memory. He only felt peace. A deep, lasting peace that no camera could ever capture. Months passed, and the world slowly moved on to other stories. But Keanu and Leah stayed true to their quiet way of living. They traveled sometimes, to small towns, old libraries, mountain cabins, always choosing places where silence spoke louder than fame. They volunteered at shelters, read books to children, and lived simply without trying to prove anything to anyone. And yet, despite their quiet life, the world never really stopped watching. One day, a small story went viral online. Not a rumor, not gossip, but a real story. It came from a local woman who ran a small bookstore. She wrote, "A man and a woman came into my shop today. They didn't ask for discounts, they didn't take pictures. They bought old poetry books and donated twice what they cost. Before leaving, the man said, 'Thank you for keeping words alive.' I didn't realize until later that it was Keanu Reeves. People shared it everywhere, calling it the softest love story in Hollywood. But what made it beautiful was that it wasn't about fame. It was about grace. Two people who found peace in a world that had forgotten how to be gentle." One quiet evening, years later, Leah found him sitting in the same garden where they often shared tea. He was watching the sunset, the golden light painting his face in warmth. "You look peaceful," she said. He smiled. "I am. You think it lasts?" "Peace doesn't have to last forever," he said. "You just have to notice it while it's here." She walked closer, sat beside him, and leaned her head against his shoulder. "You still believe in kindness?" He looked at her softly. "More than ever. Because kindness is love that's learned to stay." The sky darkened, and the first stars began to appear. Quiet witnesses to a love story that had survived loss, fame, distance, and noise. It was never about perfection. It was about patience, gentleness, and truth. Keanu reached for her hand, holding it gently. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" she asked. "For walking with me. Not ahead, not behind, but beside me." Leah smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "That's what love is, Keanu. Not a destination, just two souls walking home together." And in that moment, surrounded by silence, warmth, and everything he had once feared to feel, Keanu realized something simple. The world would always talk. The noise would always return, but peace was not something to be found outside. It was something he had finally found within.